Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. My name is Wisbon Malaya. I'm the Secretary General of Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations. Today, we are going to have a press statement of informal economy organizations in Zimbabwe on the theme we have dubbed Informal Economy Matters. And as this is going to take place, I want to quickly communicate the organizations which are part of this Informal Economy Matters. The first one is Bulawayo Vendors Traders Associations, which is represented by Deborah Mkasa, who is just on my left. The second one is Vendors Initiative for Social and Economic Transformation, which is represented by Edward Kapodongo, who is on my extreme right. The other organization is Women Alliance of Business Associations of Zimbabwe, which is represented by Irene Mukarakati, who is on the far right. Then we also have Zimbabwe Cross-Border Traders Association, which is represented by Mr. Augustine Tawanda, who is on my right again. The last organization is Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations, which is also represented by Lorraine Sibanda, who happens to be the StreetNet International president as well. StreetNet International is an organization which works with informal workers organizations across the globe from 54 countries. She is the first president of this organization as a female leader. She is also the first president of that organization from Africa, and she is also the first president from that organization who is a black person. So she is equally the one who is going to present to us the press statement for Informal Economy Matters. I'll hand over to Lorraine Sibanda now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malaya, and good afternoon and welcome everyone to this our press statement and declaration session. As informal economy organizations in Zimbabwe, we came together bound by the common ground that we found within these four organizations. The objective of the alliance is to obtain recognition of and respect for the informal economy as a key component of Zimbabwe's national economy, and to promote the rights of workers in the informal economy. In pursuing this objective, the Alliance has prepared a declaration on recognition of, respect for, and participation of the informal economy, which is being released to the public today. The declaration specifically calls for a complete halt to the harassment and criminalization of informal economy workers, such as vendors and traders, and particularly a halt to the destruction of livelihoods. Partnership with local authorities for the provision of appropriate facilities and trading areas for vendors and traders that give them access to their customers and markets. It also calls for the inclusion of representatives of the informal economy in all policy-making decision bodies where policies affecting the informal economy are made. We also call for the development by government of a national strategy on the informal economy that recognizes the importance of the economic and social contribution made by informal economy workers. In pursuit of this agenda, this alliance will be organizing stakeholder dialogue forums with invited stakeholders over the next 6 months, covering 7 key thematic areas. Thematic area number 1 will be the respect for and recognition of the informal economy. Number 2, development of linkages between the informal economy and formal businesses. Number 3, market access and infrastructure. And number 4, formalization of the informal economy in line with the ILO recommendation 204 of 2015. Number 5, financial inclusion. And number 6 will specifically look at social protection. And last but not least, the 7th thematic area is on devolution of power. The objectives of these forums will be, through dialogue and mutual understanding among key stakeholders, to develop an overall and comprehensive national policy framework on the informal economy for submission to government. The Alliance is also working with the International Labour Organization on formalization and decent work, including the issues of violence and harassment in the workplace. The president of ZICHIA, Ms. Lorraine Ndlovu, who is myself, who is also the president of StreetNet International, addressed the plenary of the 108th session of the International Labour Conference in Geneva on the 14th of June 2019, where she reiterated that the informal economy must be respected in the work it does in strengthening national economies. She also emphasized that the problem of violence and harassment in the workplace has particular application to informal economy workers whose workplace is frequently the street or an open market. StreetNet International represents over 500,000 street vendors, informal market vendors, and hawkers organized in 52 affiliate organizations in Africa, Asia, the Americas, and Europe. The Convention concerning the elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work was adopted at this session by 439 votes to 7. The Zimbabwean government delegation voted in support of the convention, which clearly states that it applies to both the informal and formal economies. The informal economy has two major statements to make. The informal economy must be at the table and not on the table. Secondly, nothing for us without us. That brings us to the end of our press statement. Now I will go to the declaration of the Informal Economy Matters platform. We, the associations listed below, representing informal economy businesses and workers throughout Zimbabwe, declare as follows. The informal economy in Zimbabwe contributes 40% of the total economy. In addition, it employs over 90% of the available Zimbabwean workforce. Nearly 2/3 of the people working in the informal economy are women. It is therefore a major contributor to national economic development. Section 24 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe protects the rights of all Zimbabweans to work in a freely chosen activity in order to secure a decent living for themselves and their families. Workers in the informal economy are Zimbabweans seeking to make a living or simply survive in a harsh economic environment. Recommendation 204 of the International Labour Organization on transition from the informal to the formal economy, adopted in Geneva at the 104th ILC session on the 12th of June 2015, calls on all member states to pay particular attention to the needs and circumstances of those in the informal economy and their families, and to progressively extend in law and practice to all workers in the informal economy social security and decent working conditions. In this context, we call upon all political and business leaders in Zimbabwe to demonstrate their respect and recognition of the informal economy in the following ways: a complete halt to the harassment and criminalization of informal economy workers, such as vendors and traders, and particularly to the destruction of their livelihoods. Provision by local authorities of appropriate facilities and trading areas for vendors and traders that provide them with ready access to their customers and markets. Inclusion of representatives of the informal economy in all policy-making bodies where policies affecting the informal economy are made. Development by government of a national strategy on the informal economy that recognizes its economic and social importance to the nation. Specifically, we call upon the government of Zimbabwe to create a separate ministry with responsibility for the development and implementation of policy on the informal economy and its transition to formality. We urge all political parties to develop detailed policies on the informal economy for inclusion on their political platforms and manifestos. We urge all local authorities to establish informal economy committees that will include representatives from the informal economy. We urge all business organizations to recognize the informal economy as a partner in the national economy and to encourage their members to include informal economy businesses in their value chains and business strategies in order to develop essential linkages between informal and formal businesses. We urge the government of Zimbabwe to avoid taking actions against informal economy workers that result in the loss of property and livelihoods, but rather to promote their well-being in terms of the ILO Recommendation 204. Finally, we urge all Zimbabweans in positions of leadership, whether in politics, business, or local communities, to demonstrate leadership by cooperating and working together to resolve the critical economic issues facing the nation. This is a time for unity of purpose and recognition that all Zimbabweans are facing hardships, but it is the poor who have the greatest need and who require the greatest concern for their future well-being. This declaration was collectively crafted by the Bulawayo Vendors, Traders and Traders Association, Vendors Initiative for Social and Economic Transformation, Women Association of Business in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe Cross-Border Traders Association, and the Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations. And with this declaration, we reiterate, informal economy workers are not criminals, and nothing for us without us. I thank you.
Thank you, President Lorraine. I think I open up if there are any questions following this press statement. You are free to ask questions.
I want to find out, in the build-up to the election, what promises were made to the informal sector and how are we doing on those promises so far? What are your thoughts on the current state of affairs policy-wise? And also, coming back to the issue of the recent move by government to dish the US dollar, what's your take on that?
Okay. You can answer, President Lorraine.
We can take another question.
Any other question?
Note Kutsi's questions.
So far, that's the only question.
Kutsai, I will request that if any of your questions is not covered, you raise it again, because you raised quite a number of questions. The first one being to say, in the build-up to elections, what promises were made? Many promises were made, Kutsai, because as the Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations, working with SAIP and BACA, we had a series of town hall meetings where we arranged for informal economy workers to meet prospective candidates and have an interface with the prospective candidates. The prospective candidates promised that there will be no harassment of vendors. There will be setting up of decent workspaces, and if they were elected into power, they would facilitate the availability of toilets in vending sites. And following up to the elections, we witnessed directly the opposite in some areas. Specifically, I will talk about Harare. We saw even a rise in the harassment and violence against vendors in the street. Goods were confiscated, vendors were arrested, some were beaten up. We witnessed quite a number of these beatings. And to say the least, we were helpless on how to assist these vendors. But to keep pushing for such policies and also such international instruments in place, as I will gladly say, we participated in the International Labour Conference, which has just ended, and our submissions, which included the presentation to plenary and the different committees, the Workers' Committee on Violence and Harassment. We are happy to say the International Labour Conference recognized that there is a need to recognize that public authorities and enforcement agents play a big role when it comes to informal economy work. And also the recommendation which supplements the just adopted convention makes it also talks about the issue on how informal economy workers should be protected from violence and harassment. So we are still working to make sure that as informal economy workers, we have opportunity to work, we have an opportunity where we can work and enjoy sustainable livelihoods. It is an uphill task, and it's going to take us a long time. We are hoping and we are pushing that we will get to a point where informal economy workers enjoy their right to work and they enjoy the right to sustainable livelihoods, as there is no other alternative means of livelihoods in Zimbabwe. You have also spoken about the economic decline. I would hereby request you to repeat your question so that I respond appropriately.
I think my question was specific to the recent move to ditch the multi-currency system and adopt the Zim dollar. How does that affect you, the informal trader? What's your take on it?
That move really affects us as informal economy traders, just as it affects every other citizen of Zimbabwe. We are in a state of confusion. I will not claim to know anything about how we are going to move as informal economy traders from here going forward. Our main issue is whenever there is a change, be it in economic policy, finance policy, I believe there is need for engagement and dialogue to take place first before there is this bombshell dropping on citizens. We need to have those kinds of dialogues so that as a nation we are all privy as to what is going on and why the sudden move to ditch the multi-currency regime, which was also put in place by the government. So I believe the answer to all this confusion and all these unanswered questions would be for government to be as open with its citizens as possible. Share as much information before they drop a bombshell which affects people's lives. Because maybe I would like to believe that the powers that be don't really know how they shake people's lives when they make such impromptu announcements. Our lives are shaken. We don't know how to move forward. Because realistically, even as government has said that we are now resorting to using our own currency, the RTGS, bond notes, and our transfer system, there is very little confidence on the ground. It becomes difficult for us to make orders, to stock up, to buy stock for our businesses. It's difficult. Very few people accept the transfer system. So I believe there is a lot of information sharing and also education on the ground, awareness raising and dialoguing that the government has got to go into, engaging the citizens.
Any other questions? Okay. If not, I think I will thank you all for this time you have been available on our press statement, and we'll keep you posted on every part of the work which we are going to do as an informal economy matters consortium. Thank you very much.